Hello everyone, this is Angie at Chicken Scratch, and today I'm going to share with you how to make a drawstring bag with a lining. I hope you enjoy it. Okay, these are the supplies that we're using today. We're using some clips and some pins. A bodkin or a safety pin will work also, a label, an erasable marker, some twill tape, rotary cutter, and then rulers. And then you need a mini ironing board and also an iron. You also need your fabric, interfacing, sewing machine, and thread. So let's get started. Okay, so I have two pieces of front fabric that measure 15 by 15, and then I have two pieces of the lining fabric, also 15 by 15, and then I have two pieces of the interfacing that also measures 15 by 15. So the first thing we're going to do is actually iron that interfacing on to the front fabric. So I'm going to slide this over and get the iron. Okay, so here's the first one. And I want to try to make sure not to get the interfacing on my iron. You don't have to worry about getting the edges because those are going to be sewn. Yeah, so you don't have to go all the way to the edge. The first one's done. Okay, so now the next step is you're going to place these right sides together, and you want to make sure that your animals are facing up. And then what we're going to do is come down here to the bottom and we're going to sew this together. Okay, so what I'm going to do first is actually clip both corners. Okay. So this is the side that I'm going to stitch on. So I've got 3 clips. But I also want to make sure that I keep this straight when I'm sewing. So what I'm going to do is just pin the bottom 2 corners so that nothing shifts when I go to sew. Okay, so I'll see you at the sewing machine. Okay, so I am using foot number 57 on a Bernina. And this is a 1/4 inch seam foot, okay? You can use whatever seam allowance you want, but this is a 1/4 inch seam. Okay, so we've just sewn our 2 front pieces together. Our animals are looking good. The next thing we're going to do is attach our lining fabric. So we're just going to place this right sides together and we're going to pin it and then we're going to go sew it or clip it, whatever you prefer. Now I'm also going to clip it over on the side so that my fabric doesn't shift. And while I'm clipping this, I will say that you can make the lining fabric a tad smaller than the front fabric, but I have done enough of these videos that people have said that they get confused about which side to sew. So I'm okay with my lining being a little bit bigger, but if it bothers you, just cut your lining a little bit smaller and I'll show you that. So see, you can see that it overhangs a smidge. So you could make it a 1/4 inch smaller on each side. So instead of 15, it would be 15 by 14 3/4. Okay, so now I'm going to take this to the sewing machine, stitch across here, and then stitch across here. So I'll see you at the sewing machine. Okay, so we've just sewn our lining to our front fabric, and now we need to press the seams. So I'm just going to flip this over. Now don't forget that you've got this interfacing here. So just be mindful of that, and you could use some fabric over this if you wanted to. You can see I'm just ever so slightly pressing that. This is the back side of the interfacing, but it's still, I don't know what the word is, the material is a little sticky. Okay, so my seams are going this way, so I'm going to make sure that I do the same thing on this side. Now, I don't want to get this material on my iron, so I'm going to use a piece of fabric to cover that up. So this is a scrap piece of fabric, and I'm making sure that the seam is flattened out. Now I can flip this over in a minute and press it some more, and that's what I'll do. But for now, I want to fold this down so that I can get to the next seam. And that is this one. So if you don't use the interfacing, then you can skip this step and just make this drawstring bag the way that I have in the past. Okay, now I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to try to make sure that that's flat, and then give it a really good press. Now we can take a peek. Yes, I got it. Okay, so we're going to slide this down and do the same thing to this one. I can see that it's already flat, so I'm just going to press that one more time. And then now the final one here. That looks pretty good. Okay, so now the next step is I want to add my label. If you don't have a label, then you can skip this step. I'm just going to take my label, fold it in half, and then place it where I want it. And then pin it to hold it in place. Okay, so now what we want to do is place the lining fabric ends right side together. And we are going to clip these. So I'm going to start with the corner here, clip that, and then clip this one. And then we want to make our opening for the bottom of the bag. So you want a roughly 5 inches. It can be more, it can be less. Just stay away from the corners. Okay, so I'm going to start sewing here, go around. But now we also want to pin the rest of this. And we also want to mark for our opening for our drawstring, okay? So what I like to do first is go ahead and clip everything so that it stays together. Because if you've sewn very much, you know, sometimes when you're sewing, your fabric shifts a little bit. So I like to clip it so that it doesn't shift. Okay, the next step is we're going to mark for the drawstring. I'm using an erasable pen. These are the Frixon. I love them. And what I'm going to do is come down 2.5 inches. Now, this is a bigger drawstring bag, so it's a different measurement from my other ones, okay? I'm going to move this clip for a second. And this ruler is actually 2.5 inches, which is perfect. And it's very colorful. So I'm going to mark 2.5 inch and then 1 inch. Someone asked, could that be smaller? Absolutely. You can make it a 1/2 inch or 3/4 of an inch, whatever you prefer. What I'm also going to do is now pin where I want to stop sewing, because you want to make sure that you stop here and then start back here and then go around, and we're going to do the same thing on the other side. So let me flip this around. I'm going to move this clip for a second, and I'm going to mark 2.5 inches and then 1 inch. Ooh. Okay, now we need a stopping pin again to make sure that when we're sewing, we stop there and leave this opening. Don't ask me how many times I forgot to do that, and I've had to rip apart my drawstring bag so that I could put twill tape in there. Okay, so we're going over to the sewing machine. What we're going to do is we're going to start stitching here, go all the way down, around, down. Like I said, we're going to stop here, pick back up here, go down, and then we're going to start at the bottom on this side and go all the way to here, pick back up here, go down, and then around. So I'll see you at the sewing machine. Okay, so now we're going to go through the bottom opening or the lining opening, and we want to make sure that our label was caught when we were sewing. If we did not catch it, then we have to go back to the sewing machine and do that. And we did catch the ends of it, so yay! Okay, so the next step is we need to box the corners. And you might also want to make sure that you left your opening for your drawstring. And I did. You can see that one. You can go ahead and trim your loose threads now also. And I'm going to check this opening. And yes, I did not sew over my openings. Okay, so we're going to box the corners. You're going to need a ruler that has this 45 degrees line, so you can see it there. This is my Creative Grids. What is this? This is a 4.5 inch by 8.5 inch, I think. Anyway, and an erasable marker. So I'm going to open up the bottom down here. I always start with the lining fabric, which is the opening, but that has the opening, I should say. Okay, so I want to make sure that this goes in the same direction on this side and on that side. So it's going to the right. I'm going to lay it flat as best I can and then line up this 45-degree line. That's the white one. There is a bunch of lines on this thing. And then I want to line up this side with the 4 inch. So you can see I was too far down. Okay, that looks good. So 4 inches, go straight across, and we're going to do this on all 4 corners. And I'm going to pin this to hold it in place. Okay, so now I'm going over to the other side. Again, I'm staying with the lining, and I can see that the lining or the seam, it's going to the left this time. So I want to make sure I keep it going in the same direction. It's not the end of the world if you don't, but I will say that it makes things easier when it is. So again, the white line, which is 45 degrees. I always feel like I'm saying that wrong. Pin it again. And then now we're going to go to the front fabric. Okay, so this is how it looks right now. And I'm going to take it over to the sewing machine and sew straight across on all four corners. Okay, so now that we've sewn our corners, we want to cut straight across right above that sew line, our sewn line. So all four corners, you're cutting that out. And then what I'm going to do next is take my iron and iron over those spots so that I can get the erasable ink off, okay? So I've just got this one here. I'm just going to take my iron. See, that's like magic, right? And then this one. Now, I will tell you, on these, because that's not fabric, that's the interfacing, I'm not sure I want to put my iron on that, so I'm just putting that piece of scrap fabric there, and that removed it, okay? And same thing here. And then the next spot that we need to do that is here. So again, I'm just going to use my scrap piece of fabric. Okay, so I'm going to reach in here. Okay, so you want to push your corners out in the bottom. You can use a pokey tool, a clover tool, whatever they're called, purple thing. There's all kinds of tools, but you can just do it with your fingers. It's not like it's real fine points, right? Okay, so I'm going to go around the bag and double check it for any holes that I might have, you know, some spots I didn't sew. Sometimes that happens. It looks pretty good. So now we want to close the opening of the liner. So what I'm going to do is just try to flatten this out a bit. You want to make sure you push out your corners in the lining as well. Mine look pretty good. And then I kind of feel like this step is probably where I'm the weakest, is actually sewing the bottom closed. But you know, it's the bottom. How many people actually open it up and inspect where you've sewn the bag closed? I have actually inspected some myself, but these are handmade. That's all I'm going to say, right? They're handmade. So right here is where I want to stop stitching. So I'm going to put my pin there, that's where I'm stopping. But I'm using clips to hold that closed. Make sure that's straight. And then the same thing over here. I'm going to use one more clip, and then I'm going to stop sewing right there. So I'm going to use that pin, or I'm going to start sewing here and go all the way down. Okay, so we've just sewn the opening closed in the liner, and now what we're going to do, trim those threads, and then we're going to place this lining inside the bag. And it might be easier if you actually press this now so that it holds, or you can just use a whole lot of clips or pins, whatever you prefer. I actually use a combination of both. Okay, so I like pinning on the seams and then clipping on the front and the back. Once I get this clipped, I'm going to explain the next step. Okay, so now we're ready to take this to the sewing machine, and we are coming down 2.5 inches to make our first line of stitching. So 2.5 inches, let's see, here we go. So that's right there. Remember, our opening over here starts at the 2.5 inch line. See, it's right there, and you can see that's 2.5 inches. So you've got to decide how you want to set up your sewing machine so that you start sewing here. You could use a really long ruler and you could mark it at 2.5 inches, but they don't have to be exact, so I'm okay just using washi tape on my sewing machine. So we're gonna go over there now and get started. I'm gonna remove this extension arm. We don't need it for this part of the video. And remember that I said we're going to come down, we're going to start sewing at 2.5 inches. So this ruler is 2.5 inches, and that is going to line up with the edge of the washi tape. So I'm going to take my fabric all the way to that edge, and then my next line that I'm going to sew is going to be the edge of this, because that's 1 inch from this edge to this edge. So I'm going to line this up in here. Sometimes these clips get in the way. They're fabulous, but they're a little on the big side. I need to get some smaller ones. And as I'm saying that, I'm wondering, are there any small ones? If not, somebody needs to make them smaller. Okay, so lane swerve there. So like I said, I'm taking this all the way to the edge of that washi tape. And then I'm going to start sewing in the seam, and I'm going to stop sewing in that seam. So hopefully it will look okay. Okay, bring it up a bit. And I think that looks pretty good. I'm not going to back stitch because I'm going to be sewing over it when I come back around, because we're going around the entire bag. Okay, so now we're going to extend this all the way to the edge of this piece of washi tape, which is just 1 more inch over. So hopefully you can see that. And same thing, I'm going to start right in that seam and then just go all the way around. Okay, so we've just sewed across the top, and we want to make sure that we remove all those threads now. We are almost done. So I've removed them on the outside, and then you want to open up and trim these on the inside. Okay, so now what we want to do is give this a good press before we add the drawstring. So we're using twill tape. This is what I really love to use. And we're using 2 pieces that measure 34 inches. One of the tools that I've not used in a video yet is this little bodkin, I can't remember how to spell it. I'll make sure it's on the screen. And this threads the twill tape through the bag for us. So I'll show you that in just a second. Let's go ahead and get the iron. Okay, so I'm going to place this entire thing inside here, and excuse my iron. I am not sure why, but it is making an awful lot of noises. I mean a lot, and I don't know why. Yeah, I've never noticed it before, so maybe it's always made it, and I just wasn't filming using it. I like this iron because it's cordless. But it doesn't get as hot as some of my other irons. So it depends on, whoops, I got a wrinkle in there. I better stop talking. Isn't this beautiful fabric? This drawstring bag is actually for Olivia. Her first Easter is coming up, and so this is the bag for her. I'm going to clip it and then extend that thing. Now I'm going to give you some advice while I'm threading this. Be careful where you buy this thing, because I had a really nice person send me one, and the one that she sent me is wonderful. They are selling some on Amazon that are cheap and very sharp, and you will poke a hole in your fabric. So my advice is don't buy the generic, buy the real thing, because it will make a difference. And ask me how I know, because I wanted another one to keep at the lake house and another one for just in case I lose the one that she gave me. And they are not all created equal. In fact, one of them is so sharp that it cut me. So if it's going to cut me, it's going to also cut your fabric. So be careful of where you buy this if you get one. The safety pin method still works, but I was so happy to get this, and it's quicker. It's actually quicker than the safety pin. It's just sometimes if you're too aggressive, this thing will come unclipped. So be careful. Okay, now we went around the entire bag and came back out the same slot, okay? So we went in on one side, came out on the same side. And then the second piece, we're going to do the same thing. So I'm just going to knot this. And we can trim the ends in a minute. And then I'm going to open this back up. You can make the string shorter if you want, but I like being able to just open this flat and it just sticks out just a smidge. So again, that's 34 inches. And now we're going to do this one. You can use ribbon, you can use fabric, you can use cord. I like using the twill tape because it's affordable and it comes in several colors. I mainly use white and ivory, but I have ordered some colors also, although I don't think I've used any of the color ones yet. I always tend to use the white or the cream. I think I've used black also. Okay, done with that for now. And then the same thing, we want to tie this. And I try to straighten these. Sometimes they just get twisted in there, but it's okay. Okay, let's check it out. So while I'm doing this, don't forget there's a free PDF over on my website that has pictures of this project, measurements, and a supply list. And it is free. So all you have to do is head over to my Chicken Scratch blog. Okay, so here we go. I'm gonna pull it up just like that. And look at this. Isn't it so beautiful? Now, let me show you the difference if you don't use the interfacing. Okay, so this is the one that has interfacing. Here's another one that has interfacing. This was my test to make sure that I was going to be teaching y'all the right thing. And then here's one without the interfacing. So it's just as pretty. It's using the same fabric, but it doesn't have the strength of that interfacing. Yeah, so interfacing, not interfacing. And it does not take that much longer to make. And look at the difference. I really like these still too, though. Okay, so thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and head over to my blog and print your free PDF. Thanks so much. Have a great day.